G'day guys, and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson, we're looking at key knowledge point 1310. That is Unit 1, Area of Study 3, and the 10th key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically, we're looking at suppliers and the supply chain. There are a number of considerations that you need to think about when choosing suppliers for your business. Now, this is the third of 4 key knowledge points from this area of study that deals specifically with factors from the operating environment. And I'll remind you at this juncture that the operating environment describes factors, forces, and stakeholders that have a direct interaction with your business, and as a result of that direct interaction, you have some control over. In this case, suppliers are businesses that you purchase resources or inputs from. And inputs can be described as whatever resources your business needs to be able to operate, to be able to produce the products or deliver the services that you sell to customers. In most cases, businesses will require the common inputs of water and electricity. When you flick a light switch on in your business, you expect your lights to come on, and you'll probably not be generating that electricity yourself. So you'll need to purchase that from an electricity supplier. Same with water. If you have taps in your business, pretty common thing for a lot of businesses to have, even if it's just in a break room or a tea room, that you probably aren't harvesting that rainwater yourself. You're probably going to be plumbed into the town water supply, and you're going to be buying that water from a water supplier. If we get more specific, we can look at the example of perhaps Nike making shoes. Nike makes a lot of shoes out of leather, and they're going to have to buy that leather from someone, probably a wholesaler, who the wholesaler themselves isn't a cow farmer. The wholesaler is not producing the leather. The wholesaler would buy that leather perhaps from a tannery that turns cowhides into leather, and that tannery might be purchasing the cowhides from perhaps a slaughterhouse, and that slaughterhouse might be buying the beef stock from a beef farmer or a cattle farmer. In this case, all those different steps involved in getting those supplies to Nike, we would consider all of those steps the supply chain. And many different businesses have to consider the supply chain when ensuring the security of their inputs. Here is just another example for you. Let's say your business makes furniture out of wood. Well, we all know wood grows on trees, so the first thing that has to happen in the supply chain for wood is someone has to plant some trees. And typically, when you're talking about lumber, when you're talking about trees being harvested for timber, we're talking about plantations. Those trees are planted with a purpose. Now, trees can just be left to their own devices. If you look out your window, you'll probably see a tree. Trees just grow when they're left alone, often. But in times where you're planting trees specifically to harvest them for lumber, that's an asset for someone. That's an investment. So typically, lumber plantations need management. They need to be protected from bushfires, so the litter on the ground needs to be collected. Any grasslands nearby need to be mowed to make sure that fires can't spread. And certainly you want to keep just sticky beaks out of there from just coming in with their chainsaws and chopping down the trees for firewood or something like that. The next step involved in lumber production might be that when the trees are big enough, you could bring in the lumberjacks with their specialized equipment and their skills to harvest that lumber. Certainly the lumberjacks probably aren't going to transport those felled trees themselves. Those logs are going to have to go on a truck, so you're going to need trucks and truck drivers who are capable of driving such heavy loads. Those logs are probably going to be delivered to factories with large industrial-sized kilns who can dry the wood, and planers who can turn those logs into planks. And then once you've got a big pallet of planks, once again, you'll probably need another distribution or transportation company to transport that product, those planks, perhaps straight to you from this point, but certainly if that lumber is going to Bunnings or going to another retailer or wholesaler, there would be even more steps involved in the supply chain. And when we talk about supply chain management, what we're talking about is making sure that every step involved in getting these inputs to your business meets certain criteria. The first thing to consider is whether or not every business in this supply chain is capable of delivering on their output to the next step in the chain. So if the forestry management company from the previous example perhaps aren't managing their forests or their plantations very well, and perhaps a bushfire does rip through, then they're not going to have any wood for lumberjacks to come and harvest later. And that can create a flow-on effect down the supply chain so that your business can't get its wood. Or let's say perhaps the lumberjacks, perhaps business is a bit quiet and they have to declare bankruptcy and close their business, then there's no one around to harvest the lumber, and that will have flow-on effects down the supply chain. You also have to consider the impacts of doing business with every other business in your supply chain. Often we hear stories of businesses who perhaps their own corporate social responsibility is entirely above board, but they've been doing business with other businesses in their supply chain that have more exploitative practices. Perhaps they're utilizing slavery in North Korea, or perhaps they're using very environmentally destructive practices. Perhaps they've been illegally logging, and the wood that's being supplied to you has come from illegal deforestation. Whatever it is, supply chain management is a complex business. And a socially responsible business will want to make sure that the businesses in their supply chain are also socially responsible, as well as every business making sure that the businesses involved in the supply chain are secure and robust and will be able to deliver the inputs that you seek on time. In summary for this key knowledge point, no business is self-sufficient. Nike doesn't have their own cow farms for leather. If you make wooden furniture, you're probably not growing the trees yourself. No matter who you are, when you turn on the lights, you probably didn't generate that electricity yourself. Whatever the case may be, your business is going to have to source some inputs from suppliers. The steps involved in getting these supplies to your business from their initial conception is called the supply chain. And when considering supply chain management and your choice of suppliers, every business needs to be prepared for a couple of considerations. To know that you've chosen the right supplier, you need to be sure that you're getting the quantity of inputs you need in the quality that you need for a price that you're happy with at the right time. Let's say, for example, one of these things doesn't happen. Maybe your supplier of wood has recently had a problem with termites and the quality of the input decreases. You're still getting the right quantity for a decent price at the right time, but then the product that you're getting is defective, so the quality of the furniture you're going to make is going to be defective, and that will make it very difficult for you to fulfill customer needs and expectations. Let's say, for example, that the quality's fine, but the quantity diminishes. Perhaps that bushfire did rip through and there's just not as much wood in the industry right now. That might drive up the price as well, which would mean that you're no longer getting exactly what you want. Furthermore, let's say that the quality is fine and the quantity is fine and the price is fine, but you really need it by Wednesday. If that delivery of wood doesn't arrive till Thursday or Friday, odds are pretty good you've been paying wages of your carpenters to just sit around, and that's wasting business resources. That unnecessary expenditure is compromising how much profit your business is going to make in this period. There are all sorts of flow-on effects from having suppliers that can't guarantee quantity, quality, price, and timely delivery. So consider when you're thinking about your supply chain or when you're thinking about your suppliers, all of the things that could go wrong in your supply chain. A wise business manager is going to sit down and think about all of the problems that might crop up and implement plans in case they come up. Might be that you have your Victorian plantation and you have your suppliers and you know that you can expect lumber in a couple of months from your suppliers. But you also have a supplier lined up perhaps in New Zealand, and maybe you know of another supplier you could turn to in China, so that in the event there is a large Victorian bushfire and that lumber goes off the deck, then you do have a backup plan and you know where you can get the resources to keep your business operating, even in the event of an emergency. That's all for today. See you next time.